So hey everybody, um, wanted to briefly touch on a few issues. I did some previous videos and discussing the family court process with custody matters and through the Ontario and Superior Courts, and the injustice for, especially for dads, but moms get it too. Dealing with children's aid and all that stuff as well. And I wanted to just kind of touch base on a few things. Um, I don't remember how much detail I went into on the last video, but on recently I had a summary judgment hearing where the justice didn't even follow procedure. Didn't do a motion for the summary judgment first. Ignored the previous order of another judge saying that, to save time so we could focus on the trial, to do the motion during the first half of the morning. And then if it was granted, then the second half of the day was set for a summary judgment hearing. She didn't do it. She just went straight to hearing, which you're not allowed to do. Pursuant to the rules, you have to have the motion date to see if it's accepted first. But then refused my documents. There was some technicalities. I think it was deliberate. They kept the file with the judges and was not downstairs with the clerks where it's supposed to be. So when you're trying to, swear in your documents and file them, the documents can't be filed because the file's not downstairs. It has to be downstairs for them to file. That's what they were telling me. So they refused taking my documents, even though they swore them in. They did swear them in. They were served. It's just I couldn't give the court its copy because they wouldn't take it because the file was upstairs in the chambers with the judge. It had been up there from July of this year until September, the end of September of this year. So, I mean, you do the math, right? We'll count it easy. So you got July, you got August, September. So 3 months that the file was not downstairs. However, the other parties, the respondents, were able to file their documents just fine. So what's going on here? Just like preferred service or something? So, anyway, get to court and she wouldn't take her copy. And I said, like, I have it. It was sworn, it was served. Here's your stuff. And, the file wasn't downstairs. And she's like, I don't care. Use what's on file. Well, what was on file was ordered to be changed, and it was changed. So this is completely different. So you need to take this. She wouldn't do it. I was forced to defend myself verbally only. So on opening statement, that's it. And I tried a continuance, but she wouldn't do a continuance no matter what I said. At that point, I exerted my own jurisdiction at that point because as a citizen of the country under Section 1, I believe, of the Charter, of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, every person in this country has judicial personality, which makes you an administration of law. So I simply said, no, under my rights under the Charter, that's not happening. We're not continuing with this hearing. It's not going to happen because I can't. How can I meaningfully participate if you won't take my documents? So reschedule the hearing and we'll, and take your copy today. And that way you have it. You've got time to review and we can continue. And she's like, no, I'll make an order without you if you don't want to. So I'm like, all right, so you've already predetermined the, decision. This is just for show. So I did my opening statement, got interrupted a crap ton of times while I'm doing it. And then she said, I'm going to reserve it, which means that she'll make a decision later. And a month goes by. She makes a decision. It's a bunch of bogus crap. And then screw me over, putting me on supervised access and all this nonsense. Doesn't address a lot of the stuff. And then I'm like, all right, so I'm pretty much SOL. And then she goes, you got X number of days to file cost submissions. So I filed the cost submissions. I'm unsure if there's going to be a hearing date or not. Doesn't specify in the order. We get no hearing date. And she makes an order of costs. States in the order that my argument is nowhere in the scope of reality. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. I have provided case law from Canley. I provided the legislation. I provided the charter and portions of the Constitution. So don't tell me I'm wrong. How can it not be in the scope of reality when it's based off of those things? And she went and ordered it anyway against the highest possible penalty in costs against an unrepresented litigant who had been begging for help for a lawyer the entire 2.5 years. And to top it off, like I said, is an ODSP recipient. And I had to pay now somewhere in the area of like $35,000, $36,000 in 30 days. Because I was the losing litigant, even though I provided the legislation that shows that under the legislation, so those of you defending yourselves, look in the family law rules, because there's a rule about unreasonableness. Even if a party is still victorious in court, but they were unreasonable, and it gives you a list of reasons, okay, which the respondents fit in that category big time, because they had stolen a medical document, which is a violation of the PHIPAA, and handed it out like chiclets. And the judge quoted that document from 1998. It's that old. It's ancient. It's not even admissible due to its age, let alone the fact that it was done without my consent. So you got this document without my consent, which under the PHIPAA cannot happen. It's under the charter, so our Constitution states that they cannot. I believe the term they used is the judges must ex officio, I think is how you pronounce it. So I mean they can't use it, and it gets tossed. It's not even considered. But she went and did it, and then she not only did she do it, she quoted it. So it's like, okay, so you went and took a 1998 psycho assessment over a 2019 assessment, and tried to screw me with it. That was unlawfully collected, unlawfully handed out, so it was unlawfully disclosed publicly and to the court. And you're going to tell me that I'm nowhere in the scope of reality when I say that's unlawful and it's unreasonable, and despite the fact that you may have made an order against me, I still win costs. I'm still allowed costs to be paid to me, not not the other way around. And they still didn't listen. And it's like, okay, that's fine. You want to be like that. So we're headed to appeal now. But it's just interesting that, they can do that, even though the rules say they can't. That who's going to hold them accountable? Right. And the judge in question was stated by another lawyer I spoke to literally yesterday, who said this lawyer never returns children, ever. This is 100% supporting a judge that completely supports the society no matter what, and clearly is bias against dads. Like I that gave me a lot of information by that lawyer stating that. I now know to look up her case law and see just how one-sided she is in her decisions, because that'll be a considerable piece of evidence to go, listen, this judge is completely freaking biased. Pull her from the bench now because she's unsafe. I'm shocked at the scope of, I mean, I'm not surprised. Don't get me wrong. I expected to get screwed over. I completely expected to get screwed over, and I did. But I'm just the excuse I thought would be a little better. I mean, it's she legit like labeled me as mentally ill and didn't even touch that in the order at all. Didn't even mention it. Like, are you kidding me? Are you that daft that you're not going to address that issue? And not to mention, she limited everybody to 2 pages. 2 pages. Two. That's it for cost submissions. I'm like, I can't respond with this. How can I fight with 2 pages? So I waited till I got served from the other parties and then filed mine. And I followed their template. And they didn't file 2 pages either. It was like 40, 50 pages, like, I'm going to file what I got to file. There's times when you listen and times you don't. And I'm just like, I tried to keep it to 2 pages though, in that I kept to the affidavit as 2 pages and even stated in my affidavit that I'm not sure what she means by 2 pages, so I'm going to stick to the affidavit being 2 pages, but I'm allowed my supporting documentation, which is legislation, case law, and the charter and all that stuff. So I added all that, and I'm just like, there's my 2 page affidavit, my submissions, and here's the rest of it to support it, right? Like, you're so wrong. I had a thing like this thick of just supporting documentation and 2 pages, like she wanted in an affidavit. Like, it's the best I can do. So, how do you you can't win with these judges. They don't care. Um, but thanks to the orders she made, it got me quite a lot of attention in some other areas, um, some international assistance to address some of these issues, because it's saying, look, Canada's abusing people, innocent people that they think can't defend themselves. And that's really no different than a warlord running through, an African village and shooting a bunch of people. It's the same thing, right? You're going into a place where people can't defend themselves and then deliberately doing whatever you want to do to them. Whether you're killing them, whether you're snatching their kids, it's the same bloody thing, right? In that you're just exploiting them, taking advantage of them, and doing whatever you think you can get away with. What's the difference? We're still losing kids, and parents are still offing themselves because of this crap. So I don't see it as any different. It's the exploitation of innocent people and poor people that can't defend themselves. This is supposed to be a great country, not a country that tears people apart. We're supposed to be a country that people go to when they're unsafe. Really? So anybody watching this video, if you're an immigrant and you are trying to come to Canada, I got one piece of advice for you. If you've got children, and the answer is don't. If you plan to have children here, don't, because you're automatically a target for the system. So don't do it. Do not do it. Stay away from Canada. I'm telling you, this is not a safe place to be. So, and it's funny because I was in on my way to Cleveland for a trip, and I was trying to remember where I was. Actually, I take it back. I was in Cleveland. Yeah, I was in Cleveland. I was on my way back from Cleveland, and I ran into a couple, a young couple, and they were saying they wanted to come to Canada because they didn't like Trump. That was the reason. And I'm like, you got 2 beautiful young kids, and I'm like, you see these beautiful little children you got? They're like, yeah. I said, how much you love your kids? They're like, oh my God, there's nothing I wouldn't do for them. I said, good, don't come to Canada. They're like, why? I said, because you're a low-income family who's going to be showing up with 2 young children. And the second you go to the border, you know what's going to happen? They're like, what? I said, they're going to call the Children's Aid Society, separate you from your kids, and before you realize they've even snatched them, they already took them, and they're already in a foster home by the time you find out. They're like, what? Really? I said, yeah. I've been fighting it for 4.5 years. Believe me when I tell you, you don't want to come to Canada. They're going to snatch up your babies. They ain't going to call your consulate. No. They're going to make a bunch of funding off it, and they ain't going to care. So, and no one's going to hold them accountable. No one. So don't do it. Stay away from Canada. Stay in your country. You only got to wait 4 years for your president to change. But don't move to Canada. Stay away. Stay away. This is not a safe place to be if you got kids. So, yeah. Interesting. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to go enjoy a beer because I deserve it. For no other reason than to say that I deserve it. So,